My name is Stephanie Willoughby, and I'm a family photographer here in the great state of New Jersey. Jersey is full of small towns with big personalities, which is why I want to explore what makes your community special. I'm interested in the stories that your community would tell if it had a voice. This is HomeGrown.
Today we're exploring Hoboken. We're getting to know Hoboken as the city she is today. Still fun, still steps from the city, still buzzing with that signature busy energy, but Hoboken's grown up, and so are the people that call Hoboken home. With loads of families, Hoboken is the perfect mix of family-friendly by day and local craft brewery by night. Today we're going to get to know some of the folks that set the vibe in this larger-than-life town, and I can't wait to get started. This is HomeGrown Hoboken.
One of the things that most New Yorkers will brag about is their excellent view of the city. But the truth is, the best view of New York City is actually from the Jersey side. Stop by the Cove or Pier 13 for panoramic city views and a quick selfie. Just be super careful. The Hudson isn't for swimming.
To really get to know a place, you have to know its history. Now, we know that Hoboken is home to some heavy hitters like Frank Sinatra or the Cake Boss, but there is so much more to this city by the river. Our first stop today is the Hoboken Historical Museum. So I know who you are, but can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Name's Bob Foster. I'm the director at the Hoboken Historical Museum and have lived in Hoboken since 1981.
So you have kind of a dual role here, right? So you're preserving the history of Hoboken through the Hoboken Historical Museum, but you're also a longtime resident of Hoboken. So you've seen a lot of the changes that have taken place here with your own eyes. Can you tell us a little bit about how Hoboken has changed in the time since you've lived here versus now?
I say that Hoboken goes through changes almost like in a 2-year cycle. So people who haven't been here for 2 years come back and go, wow, there's so many more buildings, I don't recognize anyone. And so Hoboken has gone through just so many physical changes, but also cultural. It has upscaled a lot, for sure. And that is why the museum is an important place, because we always reflect on, other times and other trends that are disappearing.
But who else is coming here? Because it's not just Hoboken residents, right?
That's a good point. I mean, Hoboken for many years was sort of a port where immigrants and families would come, but then they would move out. And in a sense, that's still happening. But an immigrant family maybe, went to other parts of New Jersey, and then they're interested in their genealogy and their roots. They come back to Hoboken to look for where their grandparents or their great-grandparents lived. And the physical streetscape of Hoboken, a lot of it is still the same. But when you get into the west side of Hoboken, if you were looking for someone at 415 Adams Street, a relative, very often that building is still there.
I feel like that's a good point about Hoboken, because much like New York City and so many other places that are in the area, right? We have so many people who came in to this country for one reason or another, and they sort of scattered into these places. Is that what we think of Hoboken, almost like a sixth borough, kind of? Maybe that's too far, I don't know.
No, we joke that Hoboken is the sixth borough. Jersey City says the same thing, but that is what has made Hoboken successful in the last 40 years, is its proximity to New York. Hoboken, a lot of its success is location, but again, connected to New York.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that people can find when they come here to the Historical Museum. What kind of exhibits do you guys have here?
Right. So we kind of mix it up with art and history. We also, we change our exhibits generally once a year. A lot of work goes into an exhibit, and we have a very active school program. We have an active website with a searchable database, so when people donate things, they can search it and make sure we are, being a good caretaker of it. We also have an oral history program where we interview longstanding residents in Hoboken and create booklets based on that. And then we also have something that's come to be very important, which we call the Sinatra Lounge. And it's a room, small room, that's devoted to Frank's memory. Frank, of course, is our most famous Hoboken resident. But we don't want to be just a Frank Sinatra museum. One person doesn't really tell the history of a town. But people do come from all over the world looking for Frank in Hoboken and ultimately end up here. We have a walking tour brochure we can give them with their admission, but they can watch fairly in-depth videos, films about Frank's life, along with other topics in Hoboken.
That's a lot. And I mean, it's not like the biggest space in the world, but you have a lot going on.
That's sort of what, we figure anyone who walks in the door who's curious about Hoboken, we're going to either get them with Sinatra, with our main exhibit, or our upper gallery exhibit. And many times they will start researching our holdings right at one of the monitors here in the museum. So we kind of see ourselves as a library resource also for Hoboken history.
Since you've seen Hoboken grow and change over the years that you've lived here, can you tell us a little bit about how Hoboken may have felt when you first got here versus how Hoboken is now?
Every town changes, and I do have this theory that everyone wants the town to be like it was when they first grew up here or moved here. But you just have to accept that if you're in a city where real estate is highly valued and you're close to New York City, things are going to change.
I think that sounds about right. I mean, I used to live in Hoboken, and coming back, there's so much that's different. But one thing that I do love is I feel like Hoboken residents do try to support their small businesses and things like their museum. I know that there's an appreciation for the space and the way you guys have kept it here as well. So we deeply appreciate that and your time today.
Sure, thank you. I enjoyed talking.
Thank you so much, Bob. The history of Hoboken is fascinating, isn't it? It's great that the museum is bridging the gap between Hoboken's rich history and the history that's being made here today. Little City Books is changing the way little ones and their parents read with their interactive bookstore. I'm excited to get to know the ladies behind Little City Books and talk to them about how their store is changing kid culture in Hoboken. It seems like you guys are super friendly with your customers. Do you find that you have lots of people from the neighborhood, people that are just visiting? Who's your ideal customer here?
It's mostly local, and it's mostly foot traffic.
So you guys probably see lots of the little kiddos growing up as they're coming in here, first in a stroller, then maybe walking. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
There's so much changing in the world, especially in the world with our little ones that they're growing up in. There's more like iPads and all the sorts of different technologies. Can you talk to us a little bit about the experience, particularly for kids and their parents that are coming into the bookstore? What kind of benefits do you think there are for being in an actual bookstore?
Well, that's what people come for. So they're coming with the expectation that they're going to spend time, they're going to be able to look through books and read, and it's very much a place where you hang out. It's not like just get it and run out, And people love to buy books for their kids because everybody understands the value of a book for a child. And everyone has memories of growing up with their local bookstore or the library. We always hear stories of, I had a bookstore in my town. And so it's really great to feel like we are the bookstore for these kids, where they're going to talk about in 20 years, they'll be saying, I grew up in a town with a bookstore. It's very gratifying.
We have story time every Fridays, where we have a wonderful storyteller and reader, Laura. We have picture book authors come often on Sundays to read from their books. We have little couches to sit on and read, and what else do we do?
We
do
have little rock and rollers.
We have little rock and rollers,
We have a music class for babies through 4 years old. Here. Monday mornings are kind of quiet in the store, so we can move furniture and lay mats on the floor, and kids come and make music and dance. And
What do you feel like the vibe of Hoboken is? You see people coming in and out of your doors every day and hanging out, like you said, in the bookstore. What do you feel like the energy around Hoboken is?
Wow, that's a big question.
I think there's a real sort of cultural renaissance happening in town. I think that more families are staying. There's ever more money in town, more disposable income that can support things like bookstores and theater. We have an equity theater uptown. We have the libraries doing more and more programming. The Stevens Institute sponsors an arts program in their auditorium, which is for the cities. So there's a lot more going on, wouldn't you say? And I think we're part of that in our events and bringing authors, and we do a lot of live music events in the store, and it feels like it's moving maybe somewhat away from the singles bar culture that it's well known for, and more into a families and a maybe more sophisticated cultural place.
And that's why I lived in Hoboken, because it was like, you know, singles and bars, and then now it's strollers and little ones. And for my work, I'm here a lot too. I'm a newborn photographer, so I'm constantly like in Hoboken with all my gear and little babies everywhere, you know. So it's just so crazy how much has changed in a short period of time. But I'm really glad you guys are a part of that renaissance and that change, because this is beautiful, and I hope that everyone comes out and supports.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys so much. The world is changing rapidly, but I hope there are always warm and cozy bookshops where parents and kids can discover the power of imagination and reading. You know that feeling when you need a gift or a chandelier or just to go someplace that's totally inspiring? That is the Washington General Store. Let's go on inside and explore what makes this a favorite in Hoboken.
I'm Megan Lucan. I'm a Hoboken resident, Hoboken mom, and a Hoboken store owner.
So we're in Washington General Store. I love your store. I love everything in it. It's really tempting to just touch everything. Do you have people in here constantly just touching the items?
Yeah, but I think, you know, that's the really important part of still shopping local, is that you can't get that online. So, you know, you're finding the product, you're picking up, you're smelling it, it makes it really tangible.
Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. It's one of the things I love the most about shopping small and supporting small businesses is that we also see you here, right? And we get to know you, and then I think there's like this emotional connection between, I'm sure, yourself and then customers that come in. Can you tell us a little bit about the people that are shopping here at Washington General?
Yeah, you know, they're the Hoboken resident. We run the gamut from really the student who just graduated, the student that goes to Stevens, maybe their parents are visiting. We've got young families that are moving into town. Maybe they needed a little more space from Manhattan. And then we've had people that have been here their entire lives. So we have a really great mix of people in this community.
Like, I feel like it's kind of nice to give somebody a gift certificate to some place like this too, so that they can kind of choose, because all the items in here seem so personal, which is a credit to you. I think I'm sure that attributes to, you know, your success that you guys have had here.
Yeah, we really try and curate the products. We buy from over 200 vendors, so that you're not just walking into a store that seems like a mall store that you can kind of find anywhere. We really try and make the assortment something that seems special. So every item you pick up has like sort of a story behind it, or you kind of can pick something up and know exactly who that's intended for. So
yeah, that's how, exactly as you're describing it, is exactly how it feels in here.
Good.
Yeah, no, it does. It feels like, you know, it feels like a hug. It really does, because it's just all of these things in a certain, I guess, period in your life, especially in the kind of adulting era of your life, you know, where it becomes a priority to give a gift to someone, or a housewarming gift, or a new baby, or whatever the heck it is. And it seems like you guys have it all here. So it's really beautiful. I really enjoy it. I want to talk to you a little bit about, since you've been here for the past 5 years, we've been talking a lot about how Hoboken has been in this like renaissance, right? So moving out maybe a little bit less of just the bar culture, and your store, I think, attributes to kind of welcoming in that like family vibe and modern female vibe. Can you talk to us a little bit about the changes or transformation you've seen in Hoboken?
Yeah, well, actually, I started seeing that when I moved here 8 years ago, and that was kind of where the whole idea came from. Was I had that need. I was looking for, I was no longer going out to the bars. I was going to housewarmings, or, my niece was born and I needed a great gift to give her. So it really kind of followed my own metamorphosis into adulthood as well.
How has it been for you as not just a business owner, but also a resident? How would you describe Hoboken to someone who hasn't visited here?
It's a very unique community, very much rich in history. Our waterfront is unrivaled for sure. But, it's so interesting. We have a really old history of people who have lived here for their entire lives, and have been generations of family members who have lived here. So you'll see old shops that have been here forever. And then you have the complete other side of it where it's new families moving in. So it's kind of this combination that is really nicely married together in what feels like a small town, but is actually a very urban lifestyle. And that's, for me, what's so important about living here is that you live the urban lifestyle. I barely ever get in my car. I can walk to everything I need, but at the same time, I pass familiar faces all day long. So
Megan, one of the challenges is that there are a lot of big box stores that come with gentrification and the renaissance of Hoboken. How have you guys been able to navigate that?
Yeah, I think sometimes having a combination can't be all bad. I'm an eternal optimist. So I like to think that the big box stores are what pulls in people from maybe outside of Hoboken to shop here, and that certainly helps us as the small business owner. But I think, our community is very much focused on shopping local, and, we of course appreciate that, and we feel that every day. They'll make it a point to go out of their way to shop here and give a gift from here because it feels special and it feels Hoboken.
Megan, thank you so much for having us in your store today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure having you. Thanks for visiting.
I could just live in here. That amazing archway and tables full of unique gifts, it makes my creative heart so happy. This is the way I remembered Hoboken when I lived here in my 20s, except with a few more little ones and a whole lot more social media. Oh, Hoboken, you are one fun city. Bookstores and specialty shops, bands and bars, museums and cupcakes. Hoboken has a little something for everyone, and it's almost in its own renaissance of sorts. The vibe of this town is found in its mix of history, coupled with some small businesses who are reshaping the way we see and play in Hoboken. It's my hope that Hoboken can hold on to that balance that makes it so special. We've learned so much about this historic city by the water. There's so much greatness in this place, so many small businesses and people that are really changing the culture of Hoboken. Hoboken is still fun and outgoing and beautiful, but it's more than that too. It's also family-friendly and a little bit more grown-up. So when you're here, please visit the friends that we made here today. After all, they're self-made and homegrown. You can find HomeGrown on TAPintoTV or on Instagram at HomeGrownNJ. We'd love to hear about your small town and what makes it great. For HomeGrown, I'm Stephanie Willoughby. We'll see you next time. Tune in for part 2 of HomeGrown, Hoboken.